Who is this communication from? So it's a written motion from Senator Jackshaw?
Yes.
Or a petition?
I second that petition.
Well, you can't vote on it because in communications and petitions there are no acceptable motions. So that's out of order. We will move on to order of business number 2, reports of standing committees.
There are none.
We move on to order of business number 3, reports of select committees.
There are none.
Messages from the governor.
There are none.
Messages from the other house.
There are none, Mr. President.
All right, we shall move on to motions. Senator Jackshaw.
Salk, I move that we make you, Salk, wear Senator Devine's alley crown for the remainder of this session this year.
Very well, we have a motion on the floor by Senator Jackshaw. Do we hear a second?
I second it.
We have a second. Wait a moment, now hold on a second. The gentleman seated third in from Senator Oliveri is not a senator. That does not entitle you to sit on the Senate floor.
I make the move to allow him to sit on the second floor.
I do not believe you. That is also out of order. You cannot change.
You just asked for a motion.
We asked for motions. That motion, however, is out of order. If we have a guest, he should be seated in the guest chair. Now back to the question of the crown. We had a second. All in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Very well. The clerk or someone who's willing to walk will bring the crown to the chair for placement on the stalls. Are there any other motions at this time? Senator Couch.
Yesterday, a clerk sat in this seat right here and actually voted. How did you not notice that one?
Which clerk was this?
Well, he's actually an attorney, but whatever.
So he was actually an attorney. Was this the gentleman that we had to have thrown out at some point?
Maybe.
Possibly.
Yes.
Yeah, so we did have him thrown out. Senator Cooney?
I'm knighting you for the crown.
Very well.
You got a deal for it.
You want me to leave the podium and go down there?
Yeah, I'm
Very well.
I'm knighting you. By the power invested in this gavel, I announce you Supreme Overlord Dark Knight of the Gunther Clark edition of the Valley. Please.
Very well, Senator Cooney, you may now return to your seat. So, do we have any further motions? Are there any motions? Senator Jackshaw?
Wait a second. I gotta find where I started. I can find it. Mr. President, I move that this body resolves the secondary committee of the whole.
Very well, we have a motion to resolve into the committee of the whole without objection. So ordered. Now I will confirm with my clerk here for just a moment. Members of the committee, you now have before you for your consideration House Bill 103. The clerk will read the title and history of the bill.
A bill for an act entitled Federal Lands Commission Act.
Members of the committee, you now have before you in its entirety House Bill 103. What is your pleasure? Senator Oliveri.
Supreme Overlord Clark and members of the committee, I move that when this committee does rise and report after having under consideration House Bill 103, it recommends the same be concurred in.
Thank you, Senator Oliveri. You have a few moments for your sponsorship speech.
All right, members of the committee, I really feel that the best way for me to be able to explain the emotion jam-packed into this bill is to speak vicariously through our guest speaker, R.J. Hyatt.
Friends, senators, countrymen, lend me a beer. I come here to praise Gunther, not to bury him. Sock, Supreme Overlord Commander, Dark Knight. How much time do I have left?
I don't know. You've already used some of it. That much is certain.
Pants are one of the greatest and worst things to ever happen to me as an individual. From an early age, I was quite opposed to them. And I petition all of you to do what every great American has done when there's something that they don't want to deal with. Force it on the federal government to take care of it. If this act passes, everyone will have a right to pants, whether they be short, tall, poor, rich, fat, skinny. They will all be able to wear pants equally. If you pass this bill, you pass a bill that America needs, that America wants. You pass a bill that will keep us from falling. Thank you so much.
5 inches isn't going to accomplish.
Thank you, Senator Oliveri. Are there any questions of the sponsor? Yes, Senator Kesson. You rise.
Does the clerk just read off the amendments to me?
That's very true.
Amendments proposed. Title change to No Pants Left Behind. Amended to include shorts, parachute pants, and chaps. Amended to include jorts and joveralls. Senator Stallings' name will be changed to Senator Stalin.
Very well. Are there any further questions of the sponsor? Senator Dwyer.
What colors and styles and designs do these pants come in?
I'll defer the question to the guests.
All right.
These pants will come in various styles and various colors. As long as the fabric is made under this great God-made sun, then it will be available in pant form.
All right. Sounds good.
Any further questions?
I'm ready for discussion.
We have a motion to move directly to discussion.
Second.
Don't see anyone who wants to ask a question anyway, so yes, is there any discussion?
I move for closure.
We have a motion for closure. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Very well, the ayes have it. The sponsor may have a moment to close.
All right, I'll defer the time to the guests.
407 years ago, our forefathers brought forth on this nation, or on this continent, I would say, a new nation conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all pants are created equal. When you pass this bill, you pass a bill for pants, for Americans, for life, for Jesus, for Satan, and for all of the above. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Oliveri. The question now arises on the motion of Senator Oliveri that when this committee does rise and report after having under consideration House Bill 103 or recommend the same, you concur in. Those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? The ayes have it. The motion passes. Members of the committee, you now have before you for your consideration House Bill 145. The clerk will read the history and title of the bill.
A bill for an act entitled An Act to Drug Facilitated Sexual Assault. committee recommendation be passed as amended. Amendments, title added to the word prevalent to the title.
Members of the committee, you now have before you in its entirety House Bill 145. What is your pleasure? Senator Hesford.
Supreme Overlord Clark, and members of the committee, I move that when this committee does rise and report after having under consideration House Bill number 145, that it recommends same due pass.
Thank you, Senator. You may have a roll for your sponsorship speech.
This is an act to drug facilitated sexual assault. This bill basically is to prevent what many call date rape. It puts a drug testing device in places that sell liquor and alcohol for, it basically tests to see if there's drugs in the drink. We need this because there are on average 293,000 sexual assaults committed each year, and 2/3 of the victims know the attacker. And the use of drugs to facilitate sexual assault is rising. So there's no reason why we shouldn't pass this bill. Thank you. I yield my time.
Thank you, Senator Hesford. Are there any questions of the sponsor? Is there any discussion on this bill? Yes, Senator Aiden.
I see that there is no reason for us not to pass this bill because it will actually really lower the chances of you being raped. Since these are drugs we're talking about here, not only do you have the chance of being raped, but you also run the risk of being dead and having horrible mental deficiencies after the drugs affect you, even some physical ailments. So not only will it help protect the people in Montana from rape, but it will also increase the likelihood as a result.
Thank you, Senator Aiden. Is there any further discussion on this bill? Seeing none, the sponsor would like a moment to close.
Yes. So the cost for these is very low. The most expensive is at $12 for 1,000 of these. So, and it gets cheaper and cheaper. So once again, I see no reason why this bill shouldn't pass. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Hesford. The question now arises on the motion of Senator Hesford that when this committee does rise and report after having under consideration House Bill 145, it recommends the same to concur in. Those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Very well, the motion passes. Members of the committee, now have before you for your consideration House Bill 146. The clerk will read the title and history of the bill.
A bill for an act entitled, An Act to Create New Stipulations for Emancipation of Minors, amending 41-1-501 MCA. Committee recommendation do pass as amended. Amendments proposed. Title, An Act to change the voting age to 16. Emancipation of minors, change code to 41-1-503. Section 2, amend code to 41-1-503. Section 3, amend code to 401.
Very well, members of the committee, you now have before you in its entirety House Bill 146. What is your pleasure? Do we have a sponsor present? Very well. Senator Cooney.
Dear Mr. Salk and members of the committee, I move that this bill be passed, Senate Bill 146.
Thank you, Senator Cooney. Would you like a moment for a sponsorship speech?
Looks like a good bill. I move on.
Thank you, Senator Cooney. Are there any questions of our sponsor? Is there any discussion on this bill? Senator Ryan.
Just 18, because you're an adult at 18. You're not an adult at 16, so no, you should not be.
Senator McIntosh.
I feel like kids can vote at 16, that their parents might use it. And I feel like they can vote for who they want. So I don't think it's
Is there any further discussion on this bill? Seeing none, the sponsor like one to close.
I need my time.
Thank you, Senator Cooney. The question now arises on the motion of Senator Cooney that when this committee does rise report after having under consideration House Bill 146, it recommends same do concur in. Those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Those opposed? Nays have it, the motion fails. Members of the committee, you now have before you for your consideration House Bill 140. The clerk will read title and history of the bill.
A bill for an act entitled Parental Consent for Abortion. Committee recommendation, you pass as amended. Amendments proposed, parental consent or a license to help for a licensed counselor to have a set.
Very well. Members of the committee, you now have before you in its entirety House Bill 140. What is your pleasure? Do we have a sponsor present?
Mr. Salk and members of the committee. Mr. Salk and members of the committee, I move that when this committee does rise and report after having under consideration House Bill 140, that it does say concur.
Very well. The sponsor would like to make their sponsorship speech.
It's a useful bill, I like that it uses the aging limit for parental consent under 18, because I feel like it's a decision made for abortion. You should be older before you make that decision.
Very well. Are there any questions of the sponsor? Is there any discussion on this bill? Motion for closure. Those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Very well. Sponsor may move to close. And they yield their time. The question now arises on the motion of Senator Devine that when the committee does rise and report after having under consideration House Bill 140, I recommend the same do concur in. Those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? The ayes have it. We had a call for division. The ayes stand and be counted. The nays. The ayes have it. The motion passes. Members of the committee, now have before you for your consideration House Bill 147. The clerk will read the history and title of the bill.
A bill for an act entitled An Act to Repeal YMCA 23-6-104 and make law more patriotic. Committee recommendation do pass.
Members of the committee, you now have before you in its entirety House Bill 147. What is your pleasure? Senator Finch.
Mr. Saw, members of the committee, move that this committee does rise to report after having under consideration House Bill 147 that it does concur.
Thank you, Senator Finch. You may have a moment for your opening remarks.
I believe this is a great law, as that all amusement games, carnivals, and fairs and such just makes them more American. America's great, and games about America are great, so I'm involved.
Thank you, Senator Finch. Are there any questions of the sponsor? Seeing none, is there any discussion on this bill? Senator Stallings.
I think burning the Communist Manifesto would be fun.
Thank you, Senator Stallings. The governor hasn't signed it. Any further discussion? Seeing none, would the sponsor like a moment to close?
I yield my time.
Sponsor yields the time. The question now arises on the motion of Senator Finch that when this committee does rise and report after having under consideration House Bill 147, they recommend the same do concur in. Those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? The ayes have it. Motion passes. Members of the committee now have before you for consideration House Bill 148. The clerk will read the title and history of the bill.
A bill for an act entitled An Act to Allow Free Birth Control to an Illegal Citizen Without Health Insurance. Committee recommendation do pass as amended. Amendments proposed strike out substantial tax refunds, replaced with a 3% tax refund.
Very well, members of the committee, you now have before you in its entirety House Bill 148. What is your pleasure? Senator Oliveira.
Supreme Overlord Clark, members of the committee, I move that when this committee does rise and report after having under consideration House Bill number 148, that I recommend the same be concurred in. So I know everybody's pretty much still asleep at this point here, so I'm not going to get too technical with how we're going about this bill, but admittedly when I first looked at it, I was against it because of the basic premise of handouts, but if we look actually at what it's doing, it's attempting to break the cycle of poverty. So it's ensuring that parents aren't having children until they're financially capable of doing so. And so the minimum income level is low enough that we're ensuring that people who actually are financially capable of raising a child are not receiving this handout. Plus, we also have a monthly substance test, and they have to be working for. So we're ensuring that we are working toward a brighter future, a more financially sound future, and we're really just trying to break the cycle of poverty with this bill.
Thank you, Senator Oliveira. Are there any questions of the sponsor? Senator Couch.
Bill 220, which was passed into law, states that it would establish a basic set of healthcare services and new health coverage between $16,000 a year and up to $32,000. I think this bill
Senator Couch, I don't believe so for one basic reason. Providence of free healthcare is not included in Senator Thomas's bill, and I love Senator not specifically included in it. Plus, this also helps cover those making under $16,000 a year, so we're going to be getting that lower spectrum too.
Thank you. Senator Kassim.
This is sponsor yield to the question. A wheel. What age group does this apply to? It's not specifically outlined in the bill, but we can assume 18 and over because otherwise I believe you have to have parental consent. This is sponsor yield. A wheel. So what about I believe you're 16. Emancipated minors would fall under that category as well because of the emancipated minor statutes essentially make them an adult at a younger age. Thank you.
Senator Nelson.
Let's sponsor your question.
I will yield.
Which form of birth control would we be giving out? Because obviously some are more expensive than others.
Right, so the way it specifies, the whole reason for kind of that amendment that specifies the 3%, we're going to allow distributing companies to essentially volunteer to distribute their own product with the offer of the tax rate. If they're not willing to do so, then the state of Montana would go with, in theory, the most reasonably priced that still works effectively.
Any further questions? Seeing none, is there any discussion on this bill? Seeing none, is the sponsor here to close? Question now arises on the motion of Senator Oliver that when this committee does rise or report after having under consideration House Bill 148 and recommend the same do concur in. Those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? The ayes have it. Members of the committee, you now have before you for your consideration House Bill 155. The clerk will read the history and title of the bill. What is it, Senator Jackshaw?
I move we be out of the record and off the journal.
Very well.
I think now is a great time to have Senator Peterson draft to Senator Cooney for an apology. Yeah, so I move that she does her apology now with the aid of Senator Anderson's beatboxing skills.
Very well, without any objection.
I object.
We do have objections. So those in favor of running this immediately, say aye. Aye. Those in favor of running it at a later time? All right, the ayes clearly have it. We shall proceed. Senator Jackshaw, as the chair of the select committee which handed out the punishment, you will officiate as needed.
Yeah, you gotta go. You gotta go up front. You can have that mic, and you can have that mic. Senator Cooney, if you could, like, I'll give you my mic. Huh? You said on that mic. Yeah, but you're the third mic. You're gonna sit in the middle. It's all about you. Go ahead and begin when you're ready.
Hello? Hello? Will the real Slim Mike please stand up? Please stand up. Please stand up. Thank you, Senator Anderson, for dropping that beat. No one in here can compete. I was charged of doing a crime. This rap is doing my time. This sorry goes to MC Hammer, bro. Apparently I was found guilty, so Senator Mike Cooney is my best friend indeed. I'll do anything you need. I'm sorry for spraying your $80 shirt with water. Mike Cooney in your bro taste, that ain't going water. I didn't mean to assault you or hurt your feelings too. This sincere apology, please accept. I would like to gain back your respect.
as we were, we had just asked for the reading of Bill 115, so. 155, that is.
A bill for an act entitled to add a section to MCA Title 20, Chapter 25 title. Committee recommendation do pass without amendments.
Very well. Senator Jack Shaw.
Mr. Salk and members of the committee, I move that when this committee does rise a report after having under consideration House Bill 155, that it recommend the same do concur in. Yes. Okay. The short title of the bill is a Safer Campus Act, and to my knowledge, this requires campus security by law to report all sexual assault cases to the local police, and this bill is designed with the intentions of having sexual assault cases not be swept under the rug and make sure we are shining adequate light on this horrific situation that seems to plague not only the state of Montana, but also the United States of America. And if we pass this piece of legislation, I personally feel less sexual assaults will happen because the public will be made more aware, is that proper grammar, of what is actually happening on our campuses. And yes, thank you.
Thank you, Senator Jack Shaw. Are there any questions of the sponsor? Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Senator Jack Shaw would like to move to close. Time yielded. The question now arises in the motion of Senator Jack Shaw that when this committee does rise from the board after having under consideration House Bill 155, will recommend the same do concur in. Those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? The ayes have it. The motion passes. Members of the committee, you now have before you for your consideration House Bill 156. The clerk will read the history and title of the bill.
A bill for an act entitled, an act to eliminate closing times for bars and guarantee freedom of operating hours, amending sections 16-3-304, 16-3-305, and 16-3-309 MCA, and providing an immediate effective date. Committee recommendation do pass, no amendments.
Thank you, Senator Finch. Thank you. Thank you, clerk. Senator Finch, you're a good guy too. Members of the committee, you now have before you in its entirety House Bill 156. What is your pleasure? Do we have a sponsor? Is there a sponsor present? We do not have a sponsor present. Well, if there's no sponsor present, then let us be out of the record and off the journal for a moment. Oh, no, wait a moment. We have Senator Peterson. Yes? Senator Peterson, are you attempting to make a motion? Very well. Let us be Senator Ryan. Yes?
Motion to kill this bill.
Motion to kill the bill? Very well, Senator Stallings.
No, it's solid now.
The governor has not signed that legislation, therefore it is not law.
We should get the governor to sign that real quick, but apart from that, we should get this done with. I like this bill. It's made by our Supreme Court clerk, and Washington have freedom. It looks really fancy and it's cool. And it's also called the Cheers Forever Act, so cheers. Thanks.
Thank you, Senator Stallings. Are there any questions of the sponsor?
I move for discussion.
Is there any discussion?
I move for closure.
Is there any discussion? Okay, seeing no discussion, the sponsor may have a vote to close. Senator Hesper. Senator Hesper, I'm not certain that that's something you should address to the chair. Okay, well, okay, how about no then? Yeah, we'll go with that. As we were, the question now arises on the motion of Senator Stallings that when this committee does rise and report after having under consideration House Bill 156, it recommended the same do concur in. Those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Very well, the motion passes. With those on the ayes, please stand and be counted. The nays. Would the abstaining members also stand? Okay, so very well, the nays now have it, the motion fails. Members of the committee, now have before you for your consideration House Bill 159. The clerk will read the history title of the bill.
A bill for an act entitled An Act to Repeal, Replace, and Revise Campaign Laws in Montana to ensure free and fair elections. Committee recommendation do pass without amendments.
Members of the committee, you now have before you in its entirety House Bill 159. What is your pleasure? Senator Shepard.
I move that after this meeting, I report back this bill introducing. This bill is to revise campaign laws and take the money factor out of our election system and campaigning. It's just setting a limit of, I guess, 150,000, I believe. And I mean, it's just to trying to help clear up all the slander in the campaign with all the TV ads and stuff. Spending money in political campaigns is guaranteed, yes, fixed, but when you pay it in $400 million to put it into play, that's a price tag, which is unconstitutional. And this bill is designed to restore our election back to the days of government before by people. I think this bill is good because it's going to help us clear up the campaign elections. So campaigning stuff, so I know this.
Thank you, Senator. Are there any questions of the sponsor? Senator Oliveri.
So before we get into the whole constitutional secret pact mess, will the sponsor get into a question? What exactly is the purpose of shortening the filing period?
discussion on this bill? Very well, as long as we have room to close.
Members of the committee, this bill needs to pass because we're spending too much money trying to win elections, not enough time trying to keep promises that they take when they enter office. And just a statistic, in the UK, Prime Minister represents 60 million, and the maximum amount of money they spend is 150,000. But in our elections, Canada, there are 1 million people, 47 million dollars to spend to buy the election. I just think this is a good bill because it'll help us cut down on all the signers in our campaigns, and reduce the amount of money that's spent. So I think that's
Thank you, Senator Shenton. The question now arises the motion of Senator Shenton that when the committee does rise from the board after having under consideration House Bill 159 and recommend the same, do concur in. Those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Nay.
The ayes have it, motion passes. Members of the committee, you now have before you for your consideration House Bill 171. The clerk will read the history title of the bill.
A bill for an act entitled Autobahn Highways. Committee recommendation to pass. Have the motion.
Members of the committee, you now before you in its entirety House Bill 171. What is your pleasure?
Members of the committee, Honorable Mr. Chairman, with your glorious hat, I think that this goes, I move this bill to pass as concur, yeah, after rising.
Thank you, Senator Dwyer. Are there any questions of the sponsor? Senator Hayden.
Sponsor, you have a question?
Yes.
On section 3, it says vehicles, so we'll have to pay $6 every time you get on the interstate. So does that mean, let's say you're driving a truck and it had one, we've all seen those crazy cars where it also had another car quite literally attached to the end of the trailer behind it. So does that mean you have to pay $12 for those two cars or just $6 for both?
Well, I believe actually it was amended to say $6 a day. At least when it came up in committee, that was what I think they said. I'm not sure. I believe that that's kind of an exception, but I think that you still pay $6, like for the whole thing, you pay $6.
Are there any further questions of the sponsor? Senator Nelson.
Will the sponsor answer the question?
Yeah.
Where will we be able to get the $6 every time we get on the interstate? Will we have to use more funding in order to build tolls per se?
Originally I thought that, but again, I believe it was amended to say that it would be $6 like every day, and I think perhaps it was going to be like taxed. I'm not sure.
Senator Alberry.
This is just a point of inquiry for the clerk. Are there any amendments written on the bill report?
It was amended in the House, and the only amendment was $6 a day. That's all it says.
Any further questions of the sponsor? Seeing none, is there any discussion on this bill? Senator Devine.
I like this bill. You all know how I feel about speed limits. It should be faster.
Senator Oliveri.
So I oppose this bill for a couple different reasons, but the main one we're going to focus on is this $6 a day point, because there's a couple different ways it can be collected. If it's through a tax, that makes it seem like it doesn't matter if you use the interstate or not, you still have to pay the tax for everybody else using the interstate at this speed. Personally, I don't use the interstate on a regular basis, I just drive through town. So it doesn't really, you're causing people to pay for something that they're not using. And if you have to build toll booths, that's an additional cost. $6 at a toll booth is a ridiculous price, especially in this state. We drove cross country 2 weeks ago to go visit my college. The highest toll we saw was $10.15, and that was in the state of New York. Everything else was below $5. So $6 in a state where we have less than 1 million people seems absurd.
Senator Couch.
I believe that the $6 a day is to replace all of the funds gained from speeding tickets and all the funds there. So, any more in terms of the question?
Any further? Yes, sir.
I stand in opposition to this bill, as every day I go to school, I drive on the interstate for maybe 3 miles to get to town. And that's just a short trip. I'm on a state highway for quite a ways as well. But those 3 miles I have to pay $6 every day, which equals out $60 every 5 days a week for me. And I just think that's pretty outrageous to drive 6 miles on the interstate every day.
Thank you, Senator Finch. Is there any further discussion? Senator Shen.
I agree with Senator Finch. It's just it's too much money because I drive 9 miles takes every weekend to come up here for Dylan, place anyway. So it's just too much money for us to pay to get on the interstate. I oppose this bill because of that reason.
Senator Stalin.
It may seem like it costs a lot to pay $6 when you go on the interstate. I'm pretty sure it's worth it if you get the right rate. I'm just going to say that.
Senator Amons.
Not only is this really expensive to pay, but I believe there will be an increase in car crashes as people are going up 120 miles per hour. That's really dangerous. So I agree with opposition.
Any further discussion? Senator Finch.
Another thing I'd like to point out is, will this $2 million be actually be able to cover for a toll booth on every single exit on all Montana interstates?
Senator Nelson.
I'd like to point out that since we passed the bill regarding alcohol, our highways will probably just continue to get worse without repair. And you probably don't want to be driving that fast. We probably get it.
Thank you, Senator Nelson. Senator Albury.
Also, I just want everybody to keep in mind, when you're driving on the highway, it's scary enough when you drive past 15 and 16-year-olds who can barely control their car. They're going to believe, because they have this invincibility complex, that they can handle 120 miles an hour in an Audi. That's a terrible idea. They can't control their car at 70.
I felt like that was almost kind of possibly a jab at the chair. Very well. Senator Couch.
I stand in opposition to this bill, and for the reason that I drive a diesel truck that does not have the capability to reach 120 miles an hour, and I'd be slightly jealous of everyone that could. So.
Senator Devine.
You don't have to if you don't want. It's dangerous. 120 is the maximum. They don't recommend you drive that fast. You'll try. taxes for employees.
Is there any further discussion on this bill? Seeing no further discussion, will the sponsor care to close?
No.
Thank you, Senator Dwyer. Question now arises on the motion of Senator Dwyer that when this committee does rise and report after having under consideration House Bill 171, it recommends same do concur in. Those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Nay. The nays clearly have it. Motion fails. Senator Jack Shaw.
Mr. President, I move that we go to order of business number 4.
Business number 4.
He has a message.
We would like us to return to order of business number 4. Without objection, so ordered. We shall return to order of business number 4. And actually, at this time, there will be multiple messages from the governor to read. So let us start with this is a courtesy notification on his signature. Senator Stalling will now be referred to as Senator Stalling. So he has signed that legislation. And as I recall, the last time Senator Stalling rose to speak, the chair addressed him as such, so this has actually been in effect for some time now. But additionally, I'm going to throw out that we have 3 bills here now that were vetoed. So if you would like to make a motion to move these 3 bills immediately onto the docket to possibly override the veto. House Bill Senate Bill 209, House Bill 140, and House Bill 145. So we have a motion to put these bills on the docket. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I believe the ayes might have that. We have division. All right. The ayes stand. The nays. Very well, the nays have it. If we're going to have a recount, we will have to have everything in order, and everyone will have to remain quiet and standing or completely sitting is to make the clerk's job easy. So one more time, would all of the ayes please rise? Members not present cannot vote. The ayes have how many votes? 15 votes. The nays. The nays have 16. The motion does fail.
What about the abstainers?
If they abstain, they obviously didn't influence the vote one way or another. Very well, who abstained? Please rise. rise if you would abstain. Now, if you are in the ayes, remain standing. If you are not, sit. The ayes have. All right, so the only one of the abstaining members voted to in the ayes. The other 5 sat down, implying that they would have to be on the nays if they're forced to vote. So that doesn't make the motion carry. We have had now another recount, and it came out with the same results as the first one. The ayes simply don't have the votes. The motion fails. Now, as I understand it, that was a motion to place all 3 bills on the docket, correct? Just House Bill 209. Who made the motion originally? We said Jack Shaw. So your motion was to place 209 on the docket, correct? All right, Senator Hesford. Okay, we have a motion to place 145 on the docket. All in favor? All opposed? We'll try this again. All in favor? All opposed? Nays clearly have it. Motion fails. Are there any other motions at this time? Senator Jack Shaw.
Mr. President, I move to raise a question of personal privilege that SAWC had carried out illegal procedure by allowing a page or clerk yesterday vote on the Senate board and thus request the privilege to remove him from the chamber.
I second that motion.
Well, given that the individual was removed by the Sergeant at Arms once it was discovered that they were here, and given that you, Senator Jack Shaw, who were sitting immediately behind the individual in question, raised no point of order for all the time in which they sat there, then I question whether or not it is the chair's sole fault that the individual remained there as long as they did.
In response to that, I was actually the one that notified the Sergeant at Arms.
And at that point, was the individual not properly removed?
You cannot interrupt me. You cannot interrupt me. That is also frowned upon. That is also frowned upon. His chair is, no, I was pointing to the chair. His chair was to, the back of his chair was to me, so I couldn't see his face. He was staring directly at you. Now, he doesn't look anything like her who was sitting in the chair the day before and that day. So how you missed her, I do not know. But once I saw that he was not a she, I removed him from the chambers.
Very well. It is clear that this body has lost all confidence in its chair, so I will at this time turn the gavel over to my pro tem.
It's House Bill 152, I believe. President of the Senate come back into the chamber, the motion needs to be made in the hand of the Senate Majority Leader. He's not moving. Senator Couch.
Say I make the motion so I don't beat this kid up. Can I still beat him up?
Not in front of me. No. A motion to have anybody move past me. No.
All those opposed?
You are out of order, Senator Couch. Senator Jackson.
Madam President, I move that we retrieve Saul, wherever he might be, let him sit or preside in the Senate. Not to come sit on the Senate floor and be a senator.
All right, the motion before us is to retrieve President of the Senate Saul from wherever he might be and allow him to sit on the Senate floor as a senator. All in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? The motion passes. Will the Sergeant at Arms please find Senator Clark for us? Thank you. Okay, President of the Senate Clark, here you Please be in order. Are there any further motions on the floor? Senator Ryan, members. Senator 138. Did we have a vote on that, Jackson? Members of the committee will please be in order. As we are still in order of business number 5. Are there any further motions on the floor?
Madam President, I move that the committee resolve subcommittee the whole.
Without objection, so ordered. Members of the committee, we now have before us House Bill number 138. Will the clerk please read the history and title of the bill?
A bill for an act entitled Legalizing Prostitution. Committee recommendation to pass without amendments.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Members of the committee, you now have before you in its entirety House Bill number 138. What is your pleasure? Senator Jackshaw, you are recognized.
Madam President and members of the committee, I move that this bill is addressing for your comments and consideration House Bill 138, that are from the same to do concur. The prostitution bill, the House wanted it. They're not that smart as us, but they're pretty smart. We're smarter. Now, if we pass this yesterday and get out of committee on the floor, you all like it. I would hope you still like it. This is gonna put money into pockets of Montanans, and in some cases, it might even create families. You could possibly have two strangers that don't know each other. You know, maybe they don't have smartphones and aren't on e-money, but then they see each other because this bill's legal. They continue following this bill, and next thing you know, they find out that they really like each other, and then they get married. So this helps the dating process, because I think it really breaks down the barrier guys seem to have talking to girls. I think it would make it easier for them to come talk to the girls, and therefore I think this is a no-brainer. We should pass it.
Members will please be in order. Are there any questions for the sponsor? Senator Ryan.
Just boys are now paying to have girlfriends.
I believe right now that boyfriends pay a lot for girlfriends. You're all on this Starbucks team. Not only that, women have very expensive taste in clothing, shoes. Y'all have 40,000 shoes. I don't know why. You ain't got 2 feet. You don't have any of them right now. Y'all have a lot of clothes, a lot of shoes, and we don't make that much money. We're studying school. So by doing this, they're going to have more money to take you to a nice restaurant.
Senator Dwyer.
Is the sponsor afraid to talk to girls? Just an honest question.
Sponsor, will you yield?
I don't know if I'm afraid to talk to girls, because there are some that are intimidating with their dashing good looks, you know. And if you pass this bill, the money, the very scarce money in my wallet would make me less afraid to go talk to them.
We're talking to a girl right now. We talk to a girl right now.
I just got to talk to Senator Ryan.
Oh.
Who is shoeless, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Senator Devine.
Sponsor you to a person.
Yeah, yes, I do.
So you think it's cheaper to pay her for intimate relations than just to buy her a coffee?
Yes.
Like I said, Starbucks is extremely expensive. So I don't know how much. I would think as the relationship goes on and on, you know, maybe the value will go up and up and up. That's kind of your discretion, you know.
I'm sorry for the girl you're paying for.
It's bad.
Senator Ryan.
Does it not bother you that your so-called new girlfriend is sleeping with probably 50 other men too?
If this does pass, that you take out a loan from the bank and you make sure you outpay the bidder. But if you can't do that, you know, it's one small setback.
Last question, Senator Rubel.
No pun intended, but Senator Jackson would be getting more bang for his buck.
I'm getting a lot more bang for my buck.
All right, as our questioning time has elapsed, we'll now move on to discussion. Is there any discussion on the bill? Senator McIntosh.
I think this bill would be great for Montana tourism. As you can see, all people go to Las Vegas for prostitutes, and I think it would be great.
Senator Aiden.
I'm just going to point out with a statistic you can find from a lot of different internet sites that legalizing prostitution can actually lower the chances of you being raped by 50%. Actually, just lowers rape percentages down a great deal. So this will actually help keep a lot of people safe.
I think they got a good point about the economy. I mean, you used to have a lot of problems. People used to love the place. Now,
Senator Nelson.
I support this bill a lot. Tourism is Montana's biggest industry. With all the new spear fishing, people be coming up here looking for a good time, and prostitutes just one way to show them that.
Senator Stalin.
Not only does this bill support our economy, but as Senator Jackson already said, this bill supports love, and I support love myself.
Senator Ryan.
I remind everyone that we did just pass a bill in the Senate that pretty much outlaws prostitution. The sex traffickers, most prostitutes are trafficked. And most prostitutes aren't drug addicts that have no idea what they're doing. They're dependent on pimps. They're all
Senator Aiden.
Actually, when trafficking, those are prostitutes who had no idea. They were pretty much forced into this. But with this bill, it's making people who want to become prostitutes completely on their own free will. And trust me, that's not going to be a lot of people.
Senator Campbell.
I believe this bill is awesome. It helps the economy of Montana, and it's for the good of the people. Maybe it'll take more of the violence out of prostitution, and it'll make a lot of people happy.
Senator Nika.
I'm sorry, but what little girl wants to grow up to be a prostitute? Like, really? You don't go into prostitution because you like to sleep with a bunch of guys. I mean, I'm not speaking for everybody here, but that's gross.
Senator Florio.
What little girl wants to grow up to learn minimum wage? Oh, we don't have all that.
Senator Nelson.
I imagine a lot of little girls want to grow up to be a small business owner, and this is their opportunity.
Senator Ryan. Senators are limited to speaking only twice on a bill. I'm sorry. Senator McIntosh, did you have a comment?
I also believe that the wages for prostitution are far above minimum wage.
Is there any further discussion on the bill? Senator Coons.
Why do girls keep getting so defensive? What guys want to do?
Is there any further discussion on the bill? Senator Hopkins.
85% of prostitutes are trafficked.
Where did you get that?
Senators. Senator Hesford.
out of prostitution, making it good.
Senator Devine.
Taking the 15% out, we want to do.
Is there any further discussion on the bill? Any further discussion? Seeing none, the motion now arises on the question of Senator Jackshaw that when this committee does rise and report after having under consideration House Bill number 138, it recommends the same be concurred in. Would the sponsor care to close?
This isn't requiring everyone to be a prostitute. This is just saying it's allowing you down in your muck, down in the dumps. You don't have to be in the dumps anymore. You have a path and an avenue to reach prosperity. And this bill right here not only will make single folk happier, but it'll put money into people's pockets so they can circulate it throughout the economy. And then that way, everyone benefits. And then the drug thing, I think they're doing drugs right now because they ain't liking it. But if we pass this bill, I think everyone's going to like prostitution. And, you know what, STDs, you win some, you lose some.
Senator Jackson.
We can't win them all. We can't win them all. If we pass this, this will definitely be a major victory for the state of Montana.
All right, the motion now rises on the question of Senator Jackshaw. All in favor of concurring in House Bill number 138, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Nay. The ayes clearly have it. Before we start on the next bill, we do have a message from the governor, so I would entertain a motion to revert to order of business number 4. Senator Jackshaw.
I move that we go to order of business number 3.
Number 3.
Order, you said 3, 4. Motions from the governor. Speeches, clocks.
Messages from the governor?
That's what I
Will
said.
the clerk please read the message from the governor?
From the governor, Aaron Oliveri, whenever asking, "What is your pleasure?" must say in a sensual manner.
Is there any objection to the governor's executive order? All right. Oh wait, there is an objection, Senator Ryan. I agree, it is awkward, so we'll take a vote on it. All in favor of me having to say, "What is your pleasure?" in a sensual manner, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? Nay. There is a call for division. Ayes, please stand. Will the names please rise? The ayes have it. All right, are there any motions on the floor? Seeing as how our Senate Majority Leader is MIA at the moment, would the Senate Minority Leader like to move us back in Committee of the Whole?
First, I would like to move to order business number 3. Is that the motion?
That's number 5.
Okay, order business number 5. I would like to, let's see. Just a moment. I would like to make a motion to try harder to find Mr. Sock.
Mr. Sock has actually been located. He was just unaware that we had made a motion to bring him back into the chamber, so the Speaker of the House is alerting him of that now.
Oh, okay.
We found it.
Then I would like to move to return this to committee of the whole.
Without objection, so ordered.
What's the next bill?
All right, the members of the committee will now be in order. Members of the committee, we now have before us House Bill number 100. Will the clerk read the history and title of the bill?
A bill for an act entitled, an act to prohibit the sale of public land for private interests. Committee recommendation do pass without amendments.
Members of the committee, you now have before you in its entirety House Bill number 100. What is your pleasure? Do we have a sponsor? I will appoint somebody to sponsor it if somebody doesn't stand up. Senator Stahl.
Do I have to say something?
What is it regarding? Oh yeah, you have to say something.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, I note that when this committee does rise report after having consideration of House Bill 100, that is recommended the same to concur.
Thank you.
Would the sponsor like to give opening remarks?
So, this bill is really good, actually. In case you don't get what the bill does, basically it keeps public land public. And so if you're a rich businessman that's a billionaire, you can't buy any public land and use it for your own evil. Good, probably an evil bill. And this will keep everything that is public. And if there is a need to buy public lands, the community will have to vote on that sale. And it's a really good sale. It just helps the people of Montana keep Montana in its town.
Thank you, Senator Stalin. Are there any questions for the sponsor? Seeing none, we move to discussion. Is there any discussion on the bill? Any discussion? Senator McIntosh.
I'm in strong support of this bill. Our public land should be ours to use, and it should be something to their business owners from Washington.
Thank you, Senator McIntosh. Is there any further discussion on the bill? Any further discussion? Seeing none, would the sponsor care to close? Stalin.
Sorry. Since I see our brings bill, I thank you. You're a cool guy, and thanks. I yield my time.
The question now arises on the motion of Senator Stalin that when this committee does rise and report after having under consideration House Bill number 100, it recommends the same be concurred in. Those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Nay. The ayes clearly have it. Who called for division? Amir Dennis? Senator Devine, you're not funny. All right, members of the committee, we now have before us House Bill number 102. Will the clerk please read the history and title of the bill? Members, please be in order.
A bill for an act entitled to change the state song of Montana. Committee recommendation to pass as amended. Amendments change On Butte High School to Gold Digger by Kanye West. State and Business Taxation Committee will receive an army of pages upon passage.
All right, are those the only amendments?
Yes.
Members of the committee, you now have before you in its entirety House Bill number 102. What is your pleasure? Is there a sponsor present?
No.
Senator Nelson.
Alright, Madam Chair, members of the committee, I move that when this committee does rise on the floor after having under consideration House Bill 102, that it does pass or occur as amended.
Close enough. Would the sponsor like to give some opening remarks?
Kanye West, as we've discussed before, is an urban philosopher. Us as Montanans can definitely relate to that because we live in such an urban state. The song's a classic, and I love it, and I hope you love it too. I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you, Senator. Are there any questions for the sponsor? Senator Dwyer. Will the chair, sure.
Yeah, will you sing the proposed new state song for us? The whole thing.
Can somebody like Google the lyrics for me?
I got you.
Or like hit me up with some background music?
I got this.
Because I know like a line, and I'm pretty sure the only line I know is I ain't saying she's a gold digger, so that's pretty much the only important line. In the meantime, while somebody's hitting me up with those lyrics, oh wait, our Senate minority. Oh boy. Does anybody know how to do the verses? Can anybody rap? I don't know what I can do it. I love it. Can I lip sync something? Can I say that? Am I allowed to say the N-word? Alright, we got the point, we're chill? Good? Are you guys satisfied? Do I need to use the karaoke version and actually sing it? Oh yeah, that's a... That karaoke version is all I'm waiting until it gets to the one that I can actually Now I ain't saying she a gold digger, but she ain't messing with no broke. I ain't saying she's a gold digger, but she ain't messing with no broke fellas. Get down, girl, go ahead, get down. Get down, girl, go ahead, get down. Get down, girl, go ahead, get down. Get down, girl, go ahead. I can rap. She said I can tell you rock, I can tell by your charm, far as girls you got a flock, I can tell by your charm and your arm, but I'm looking for the one, have you seen her? My psychic told me she'll have a, like Serena, Trina, Jennifer Lopez, four kids that I gotta take all day to showbiz. Okay, get your kids, but then they got their friends, I pulled up in the Benz, they all got up, and we all went down it in, and then I had to play. If you with this girl, then you better be paid, you know why, it took me too much to touch her. From what I heard, she got a baby by Busta. My friend said she used up with Usher. I don't care what none of you all say, I still love her. Now I ain't saying she's a gold digger, but she ain't messing with no broke. Now I ain't saying she's a gold digger, but she ain't messing with no broke. Get down, girl, go ahead, get down. Get down, girl, go ahead, get down. If you know the lyrics, sing along. Go ahead, get down. Get down, girl, go ahead. Is that sufficient? Are we good? Now. Are there any further questions for the sponsor regarding this bill? Seeing none, we'll move to discussion. Is there any discussion on this bill? Any discussion on the bill? Were you raising your hand, Senator? Okay. Senator Finch.
I'd just like to say that song would be extremely appropriate for the state of Montana. Considering we have a long history of coal mining in our state.
Senator Camp.
Okay, so I think this bill is very appropriate, not because of gold digging, but because since Montana will have a lot of money from prostitution and those types of things, I think this would be great, and I hope nobody tries to gold dig Montana, but I don't know. That we do. Oh yeah, that bill didn't pass.
Is there any further discussion on the bill? Any further discussion? Seeing none, would the sponsor like a minute to close?
There's a multitude of reasons why this bill should pass, and I can see none why it should not. I yield the rest of my time.
All right, thank you, Senator Nelson. The question now arises on the motion of Senator Nelson that when this committee does rise and report, after having under consideration House Bill number 102, I think it was, it recommends the same be concurred in. Those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Nay. The ayes clearly have it. I'm hearing things, aren't I? All right. Next bill. Members of the committee, we now have before us House Bill number 105. Will the clerk please read the history and title of the bill?
A bill for an act entitled, an act prohibiting an employer from requiring passwords or usernames for employee or job applicants' personal social media accounts and providing an exception. Committee recommendation do pass as amended. Amendments proposed. Usernames are one word, $100 fine for asking, second strike, company on probation plus $500 fee. Within 30 days of passing, all passwords removed from database. Third offense, 30 days in jail plus $1,000 fine.
Thank you, clerk. Members of the committee, you now have before you in its entirety House Bill number 105. What is your pleasure? I don't know what that was. Is there a sponsor? Senator Nika.
Madam Chair and members of the committee, I move that this committee does rise a report after having Okay, so this bill will prohibit employers from requesting usernames or passwords from employees from social media accounts. As Montanans, privacy is very important to us, and it is also a right. If we allow employers to have access to personal social media accounts, it is taking away the privacy right of an employee. We use social media as a way to communicate through privacy and to the public. When you post something on social media and make it public, that, like a tweet or Facebook post, you are allowing that information to be public. However, when using Messenger or private message and or direct message, it is your right to keep those conversations private. It is extremely different for your boss drives by your house to see what's outside and give him the keys to your house. When you post something online, you are allowing any and all to see it, even if that happens to be your employer. But when using email or private messaging, it is a right to privacy to keep any and all who wish to know about it. There are a few exceptions that must be addressed. If an employer had specific information about work-related activity being expressed or unauthorized transfer by employee of an employer's proprietary information or any investigations of criminal activity. I believe this bill is needed for the fact that all activities outside of work cannot be a determining factor in employer hiring an employee. What you do in your free time is not your employer's business unless it involves criminal activity and or anything stated previously. This will help enforce privacy and protection of employees that I believe is needed when applying for a new job.
Thank you, Senator. Are there any questions for the sponsor regarding this bill? Seeing none, we will move to discussion. Is there any discussion on the bill? Somebody talk about it. Senator Ryan.
This is a great bill because your employer should not be able to interfere in your personal life outside of work. So, yeah.
Is there any further discussion on the bill? Seeing none, would the sponsor care for time to close?
I yield my time.
Thank you, Senator. The question now arises on the motion of Senator Nika that when this committee does rise and report after having under consideration House Bill number 105, that I recommend the same be concurred in. Those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? The ayes clearly have it. All right, members of the committee, we now have before us House Bill number 106. Will the clerk please read the history and title of the bill?
A bill for an act entitled Raising Barrel Limit and Revising Simple Laws on Small Breweries. Committee recommendation to pass without amendments.
Members of the committee, you now have before you in its entirety House Bill number 106. What is your pleasure? Is there a sponsor present? Oh, Senator Ryan, I'm sorry.
Madam President, members of the committee, I move that when this committee does rise and report after having under consideration House Bill 106, that it does the same.
Would you care for opening remarks?
Yeah, so right now, our barrel limit for microbreweries is 10,000 annually. So you can only use 10,000 barrels or sell 10,000 barrels of beer. Wyoming has 50,000, Idaho 30,000, and North Dakota 25,000, so we're definitely lacking in our geographic region. There are only 15 microbreweries in Montana right now, so it would definitely impact our economy in a positive way. With an estimated 60 million in annual sales and consumer demand that would continue to grow. It would be great for entrepreneurs and great for Montana.
Thank you, Senator. Are there any questions for the sponsor regarding this bill? Seeing none, we'll move to discussion. Is there any discussion on this bill? Come on, you kids. I know you can say something about this. We've got a ton of breweries. That is in fact a comment. I heard a motion for closure. Would the sponsor care for a moment to close?
I yield my time.
Thank you, Senator. The question now arises on the motion of Senator Ryan that when this committee does rise and report after having under consideration House Bill number 106, that I recommend the same be concurred in. All in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. You're kidding me, said the biz? Okay. Senator Jack Shackles.
Madam President, I move we recess until 11 o'clock.
That would be a 10, 11-minute recess. Is there any objection? So ordered. Return at 11 o'clock.
If you wish to have Senator Clark back, I would prefer you come up here and sign.
Hey guys, we kind of have a petition going on up here to get Senator Clark to come back in. Everybody who wants him to come back in, will you come up and sign it? Okay, everybody kind of signs it.
So cool.
I'm sorry, hearts. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to impress me. I'm nervous. I do want to sign this, but I have some notes that I have to sign. You still want to sign it? Nope. Yeah.
We should put Shannon Temple on the count. Aaron, like our we were going to ask a question if that's what you would write.
Did you see her speak? Did you see Bree speak? Did you take a cold shower? Yeah. Yeah, she was an English.
I took 2 calls.
No, I did.
I took 2.
I took 2 cold ones.
What?
Okay, it's
So you guys are you guys recessed now?
What did you say? I heard something. What? That's okay, it's an experience.
Oh, yeah, James proud.
Oh.
All right, we do now have quorum. Committee of the whole will be back in order. Maloney, Powers. Are there any motions on the floor from the Senate Majority Leader?
Madam President, I believe this committee is also committee of the whole.
Thank you. Without objection, so ordered. The members of the Committee of the Whole will please be in order. Members of the committee, we now have before us House Bill number 107. Will the clerk please read the history and title of the bill?
A bill for an act entitled, "An Act to Require a 25-cent Fee on all 3 disposable bags in all commercial stores." Committee recommendation do pass without amendments.
Members of the committee, you now have before you in its entirety House Bill number 107. What is your pleasure? As our Sergeant at Arms is currently off locating our President of the Senate, will the biggest guy in the room please get all the representatives out? 400. Senator Stalin.
I motion to have this letter read from the representatives.
Is there any objection? So ordered. If the House members will be in order. Senators and representatives, be in order, or we are not reading the letter. Alright,
Don't kick it.
Alright, the letter reads, "Dear Communists, oops, I meant Senate chambers. What is your guys' deal written with very poor grammar? Do you hate America and the sports and athletes provided? Can you imagine Gronk on crystal meth? Hockey and all sports included would be 10 times more interesting." Oh, 10. Do you want to deprive African children of good drug money? Even golf would be worth watching. Chess on meth? Think of all the possibilities you're shooting down by not letting us shoot up. Please reconsider meth committee. Representatives, you now have had your letter read. Please exit the Senate chambers and we will reconsider placing the meth bill on the docket. All right, members of the Senate, please be in order. We cannot I cannot mandate that we reconsider this bill. Is there a motion on the floor to reconsider the bill? No. Senator Stalin.
I motion to reconsider the bill.
I'm hearing a lot of objections, so we will take a vote on it. All in favor of reconsidering the bill, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? Nay. The nays clearly have it. We will not reconsider the bill. There is a call for division. Ayes, please stand.
I want meth in athletics.
Nays, please stand. Okay, there are definitely more than 7 nays and there were only 7 ayes. We will not reconsider this bill. Is there a motion on the floor to resolve this to committee of the whole? Will you make a motion?
Madam President, I move this committee proposal.
Without objection, so ordered. Committee, we now have before us House Bill number 107, which we were discussing before that tirade. Will the clerk reread the history and title of the bill to remind everyone?
Bill for an act entitled, an act to require a 25-cent fee on all 3 disposable bags in all commercial stores. Committee recommendation be passed by unanimous.
We are presently going to interrupt this bill. I issued an executive order to reappoint President of the Senate Clark as the president.
Well, we're back. Hope Erin has enjoyed her time as President of the Senate. My paperwork is a mess, so it'll take me a moment here. Sponsor for House Bill 107. Sponsor for House Bill 107. Oh wait, I think I see Senator Ryan. Are you raising your hand or clicking your? Anyone? Okay, yeah, all right. You're being forced, apparently.
President and members of the committee, I move that when this committee does rise and report, that it makes the recommendation of the same concede. Concur, whatever.
Very well. You may give your speech.
This bill is an act to require a 25-cent fee on all 3 disposable bags in all commercial stores. So it looks like for every 3 disposable bag you buy, you have to pay 25 cents. Yeah.
Are there any questions of the sponsor? Any questions of the sponsor? Seeing none, is there any discussion on this bill? Senator Oliveri.
Just a brief point of clarification, because we talked about this in our committee. That 3 isn't actually supposed to be there. It's one of those random numbers that sometimes gets plopped into lines, so that 3 isn't really there. And I believe there was also an amendment in House Committee to eliminate paper, so it's just referring to plastic bags. I'm not sure if the bill that we passed through here yesterday outright banning plastic bags has been signed yet. If not, this is our best alternative.
Senator Jack Shaw.
The governor vetoed the bill that completely outlawed plastic bags, but he said he would pass the one with the taxation.
Any other discussion on this bill? Anybody? Seeing none, would the sponsor care to close?
So this would be really good for the economy and help the pollution. So vote yes.
All right. The question now arises on the motion of Senator Ryan that when this committee does rise and report after having under consideration House Bill 107, was that correct? 107, that when this committee does rise and report after having under consideration House Bill 107, I recommend the same do concur in. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Those opposed? The ayes have it. Motion passes. Members of the committee, you now have before you for your consideration House Bill 122. The clerk will read the title and history of the bill.
A bill for an act entitled Why Have 5 When You Can Have 4? Committee recommendation, do pass without amendments.
Members of the committee, you now have before you in its entirety House Bill 122. What is your pleasure?
I would like to make a motion to edit the docket. I would like to move House Bill 176 up the docket a little bit. Is that possible?
I believe this is out of order. I'm sorry. Senator Devine.
Mr. Salk and members of the committee, I move that when this committee does rise and report after having under consideration House Bill 122, that it recommended the same do concur. Yeah.
Very well. Would the sponsor care to make an opening speech?
4 is better than 5.
Are there any questions of the sponsor? Senator Ryan.
When is this going to have to extend a school year then?
Couple hours.
Senator Thomas.
Can I answer that question? We have a 4-day school week, and it just makes the day longer. Our day starts at 7:50 and gets over at 4:30. So we graduate the 31st. So it's about the same as everyone else.
Is there any other discussion about this bill? Senator Oliveri.
Will the sponsor yield? I don't know if you'll know the answer. So, do you happen to know, has the governor signed the exact same bill that we passed yesterday?
No.
He hasn't, or you don't know? He hasn't?
Okay. Are there any further questions, sir? Any further discussion? Seeing none, would the sponsor care to close?
Seems to work for them. Don't see why it wouldn't work for anybody else.
Very well. The question now arises on the motion of Senator Devine that when this committee does rise and report after having under consideration Bill 122, I recommend the same do concur in. Those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Those opposed? Seems the ayes have it. Very well, the motion passes.
as a quick option out of the journal note, did any member of this body take possession of the gavel that was in use in the House? Mr. Cooney, did you take possession of a gavel from the House? You did not. Very well. It was asked of our body whether we had taken possession of said gavel. Also, it also appears as if the gavel for the Senate is not present. Senator Oliveri. Indeed. Well, I have a replacement, so. Senator Stalin had a desire to amend the docket. Now would be a good time to do that.
Thank you. I would like to move House Bill 161 up the docket. In front of 23, I guess.
Yeah. We have a motion to amend the docket from Senator Stalin. Do we have a second? Those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Very well, the motion passes. If yes, Senator Hart.
I've been told I'm supposed to move to have Senator Cooney removed from the floor.
I don't care. Actually, I know his dad. Go get mad.
So there was some sort of motion to remove someone from the floor. This seems to be at least a matter of privilege, so it will probably require the 2/3 vote to remove the senator. Senator Cooney is going to leave voluntarily, it seems. Very well. Members of the committee, you now have before you for your consideration House Bill 161. The clerk will read the history and title of the bill.
I meant 161, not 176. No, I said 161 actually. I didn't. I'm sorry. My bad.
A bill for an act entitled An Act to Outlaw and Disclose Dark Money in Montana. Committee recommendation, do pass without amendments.
Members of the committee, you now have before you in its entirety House Bill 161. What is your pleasure? Senator Stalin.
Mr. Chair and members of the committee, I move that when this bill does rise in report after having under consideration House Bill 161, that I recommend the same do concur.
Thank you, Senator Stalin. You may give your sponsorship speech.
So, what House Bill 161 does, it outlaws dark money in Montana and discloses it. So what this means that any candidates in the state of Montana, they must divulge all money donated to their campaign funds. That means that they can't have under-the-counter money handed to them. And it's important to do this bill because actually this is an actual law. It's going to be a law in October, which is an interesting fact. It's actually in the legislature right now. And it's important to do it. It's going to be good for the people of Montana and helps us have fair elections. And this law actually goes one step further. So anybody that uses dark money in Montana under this law will be kicked out of their position and dismissed from their office. So this will help Montana and democracy in Montana a lot.
Thank you, Senator Stahl. Are there any questions of the sponsor? Is there any discussion on this bill? Senator Oliveri.
So when we talked about this in committee, kind of an interesting discussion came up. Dark money, by definition, is the money with which you do not have to disclose your donors by the SpeechNow.org versus FEC and Citizens United versus FEC cases. So this bill is actually unconstitutional, but the governor signed it into law, almost the exact same bill, actually yesterday morning at about 9:30. And so it became a question of the reason the bill was passed in the actual Montana legislature was essentially saying, screw you, Supreme Court, we're going to do this anyway in our state, and the bill is going to be appealed to the Supreme Court to determine whether it's actually constitutional or not. So it's not as cut and dry as it seems. It's going to cause a court battle without question. It's just a matter of whether we, hypothetically, as a student body, would want to cause that court battle.
Thank you, Senator Oliveri. Is there any further discussion on this bill? Seeing none, would the sponsor care to close?
Thank you for your time considering this bill. Even if it does seem unconstitutional to you, I assure you that this bill is just in the favor of the people and our state.
Thank you, Senator Stahl. The question now rises on the motion of Senator Stahl that when this committee does rise and report after having under consideration House Bill 161, I recommend the same do concur. In favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The motion passes. Members of the committee, you now have before you for your consideration House Bill 123. The clerk will read the title of the bill.
A bill for an act entitled Nutritionally Balanced Hot Lunches. Committee recommendation do pass as amended. Amendments proposed, Section 2, line 10, strike out last sentence. Change to, if schools do not follow this law, they will be fined $500 per semester.
Very well. Members of the committee, you now have before you in its entirety House Bill 123. What is your pleasure? Is there a sponsor present? Is there a sponsor present? Yes, Senator Jack Shaw.
Mr. President, members of the committee, I move that when this committee does rise and report after having under consideration House Bill 123, that it recommend be concurred in. Simple bill, nutritionally balanced hot lunches. We just want to make sure we're providing an adequate meal for children who might not be able to afford it at home. We don't want to see kids go hungry throughout the school day, and if you pass this bill, it'll prevent that from happening. And I believe, did we already list the amendments? Yeah, okay.
Are there any questions of our sponsor? Is there any discussion on this bill? Senator Hesford.
I personally think this is a great bill. We need our hot lunches in schools to be healthy. I think it's something that my mother would approve. She's very healthy.
Thank you, Senator Hesford. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, would the sponsor care to close? The sponsor yields their time. The question now arises on the motion of Senator Jack Shaw that when this committee does rise and report after having under consideration House Bill 1, 2, 3, it recommend the same, do concur in. Those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. As opposed? The ayes have it, the motion. Members of the committee, now before you for your consideration, House Bill 129. The clerk will read the history and title of the bill.
For an act entitled, An Act to Ban High School on Friday, Section 20-1-303. Committee recommendation, do pass without amendments.
Members of the committee, you now have before you in its entirety House Bill 129. What is your pleasure? Senator Hesford.
I move that when this committee does rise and report after having under consideration House Bill number 129, that it recommend the same do pass. We've already passed at least 1,000 of these bills. So, and this one looks to be the best written, and every argument has already been made. So I think we should pass this one also. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Hesford. We have a motion for cloture. We have a second. Those in favor? Opposed? Very well. The question now arises on the motion of Senator Hesford that when this committee does rise and report after having under consideration House Bill 129, it recommend the same do concur in. Those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Those opposed? Would all of the ayes raise their hand? Would the nays raise their hands? The nays seem to have it. Motion fails. Members of the committee, you now have before you for your consideration House Bill 139. The clerk will read the history and title of the bill.
A bill for an act entitled, An Amendment for Irresponsible Parents. Committee recommendation, do pass as amended. Proposed amendments add section that monies will come from general fund.
Members of the committee, you now have before you in its entirety House Bill 139. What is your pleasure? Do we have a sponsor present? Do we have any sponsor present? Senator Hesford.
I move that when this committee does rise and report, after having under consideration House Bill number 139, that it recommend the same concur. This just holds parents responsible for abusing their children. It's a fairly logical bill, I think. It was written by two people with the same name, which is pretty cool also. So I think it should pass.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions of the sponsor? Senator Aiden? Oh. Is there any discussion on this bill? Senator Couch.
I stand in opposition to this bill because personally, as a child, I was whopped a couple times. So I turned out all right. Kind of.
Thank you, Senator Couch. Are there any further discussions on this bill? Seeing none, would the sponsor care to close?
I yield my time.
The question now arises on the motion of Senator Hesford that when this committee does rise and report after having under consideration House Bill 139, it recommend the same do concur in. Those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The motion passes. Senator Stalin.
To amend the docket, I would like to move House Bill 176 up the docket in front of 150.
We have a motion to amend the docket. Do we have a second? Those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? The ayes seem to have it. So, members of the committee, you now have before you for your consideration House Bill 176. The clerk will read the title of the bill.
A bill for an act entitled An Act to Outlaw Fracking in the State of Montana. Committee recommendation, do pass without amendments.
Members of the committee, you now have before you in its entirety House Bill 176. What is your pleasure?
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I move that when this committee does rise and report after having under consideration House Bill 176, that it recommend the same do concur.
Thank you, Senator Stalin. Do you wish to give a sponsorship speech?
Yes, thank you. So just before I say anything, it's not, this act actually got amended. It's not outlawing fracking, it's actually imposing a fee on fracking, so you get a $100,000 fee for each well made to do fracking. And if you don't know what fracking is, it uses super high pressure liquids into subterranean rocks and to force open fissures and extract oil and gas. And it doesn't do anything good for the environment, it actually kills it. It kills species surrounding the area where it's fracking, and it's a very large area, if I say so. And what this will do for us, if we can find fracking, it will discourage fracking in the state of Montana, keeping our beautiful state beautiful, and also giving us money for the states by doing this fee. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Stalin. Are there any questions for the sponsor? Senator Aiden?
sponsor yield to a question?
I yield.
Are there any cases where fracking has actually gone to a population's drinking water?
Yes, actually, in the Bakken, the chemicals and it's basically poison what goes into your water. In the Bakken, you can see videos on YouTube where people are lighting their tap water on fire. And if that doesn't make you want to pass this bill, I don't know what will, because it's not good to light your tap water on fire.
Senator Ryan.
Can I clarify that that was a pipe burst that went that into their water, not the actual fracking? So no, the fracking does not go into your water.
Senator Oliveri.
Will the sponsor yield?
Yeah.
Is there any current economical technology that can be used for tight oil in the current market as an alternative?
No, actually not. But fracking is the only way to get subterranean oil. So it's oil that's extremely deep down in the ground. But I don't see why you would want to get that oil, because first of all, it's extremely dangerous for our whole planet almost, because it's deep down in the ground. And I don't think you want to go down there. It can do things that you don't want to happen, I guess. I don't know.
Any further discussion, questions? Are there any questions still, or can we move to discussion? Are there anyone who wishes to speak on this? Senator Ryan?
Fracking contributes to a large part of Montana and both North Dakota's economic growth. That is the reason that we can have U.S. oil. And if you take that away, we're just getting oil from Saudi Arabia and importing stuff that we don't need to. And it's also not as dangerous as he's saying. I live in eastern Montana and I've never had oil in my water, I can guarantee.
Any further discussion on this bill? Seeing none, would the sponsor care to close?
I just want to say that I'm not trying to get rid of fracking. I'm just trying to discourage it, as it is dangerous. And the money that we get from this fee will be there's an amendment for that.
Proposed amendments from the House. Discourage fracking by making it a $100,000 fee per oil well, the amendment, 2% per well with additional per week.
May I continue?
Yes.
So as I was saying, it just discourages fracking, and I believe that it's more important for the future of Montana in the long term to not have as much fracking going on as there is right now, and it'd be healthier for everybody. Thank you.
The question now arises on the motion of Senator Stalin that when this committee does rise and report after having under consideration House Bill 176, it recommend the same do concur, and those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? The ayes have it. The motion passes. The chair would like to point out at this time that we have a pile of bills that were transmitted to us either from the governor's veto desk or from the other house that have not been brought up. We have House Bills 145 and 122 sitting here, as well as House Bills 202, 207, and 217. Senate Bills 202, 207R, and 217, as well as House Bills 145 and 122. Senator Oliveri.
I move to reconsider Senate Bill 207R. That was teaching herpetology, the resolution.
Very well. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? The ayes seem to have it. So this bill has been overridden in the House. It is now up to the Senate to decide whether to override the veto. The justification given for the veto: whereas reptiles aren't endangered in Montana, and whereas this would waste money, and whereas your deliberate use of the word whereas versus and, whereas. Senator Oliveri?
Just as a point on the comments on the governor's veto, this actually isn't going to cost us any money because it's just a recommendation that OPI does it. And reptiles are not currently on the endangered species, but they're very close to being placed there if we don't do something about it. And it's a resolution. You're supposed to use the word whereas, not and.
Very well. So the motion to reconsider this has passed. So is there any further discussion on that motion? Senator Dwyer.
I move that Senator Oliveri, oh my God. I move that Senator Oliveri goes to the House and tells them that herself.
Senator Dwyer, that is not only out of order, but also strangely redundant since the House has already overturned the governor's veto.
Oh, all right. Well, sounds good.
Any further discussion? We're going to complete this this particular item of business before we throw out more numbers and confuse people. So if we are ready for the question, the question now arises on the motion of Senator Oliveri that when this committee does rise and report after having under consideration Senate Bill 207R, it recommend the same do concur in favor of overriding the veto, signify by saying aye. Aye. Nays? Was that one nay? So we do have 2/3 then. So the clerk will handle the necessary paperwork for 207 here. The other bills, we have Senate Bills 217 and 202, as well as House Bills 145 and 122. House Bill 122 and 145. Senator Oliveri. Very well. Governor's justification for the veto of Bill 122. Schools should have the option of a 4-day or 5-day school week. Mandatory 4-day week may not be beneficial to some schools. Schools already have the opt-in for a 4-day school week. Very well. A small business would lose 50% of profits due to the cost of drug tests. One test per drunk would cost too much money. Senator Hayden?
I would just like to point out about Bill 145 that the author and sponsor of the bill actually talked to the governor, and it turns out that the governor had a complete and utter misunderstanding about the whole payment process, so it's already sorted out, and he's actually hoping that it will be passed again in the Senate.
Senator Oliveri.
Given that Governor Temple wants us to repass the bill through the Senate because he misunderstood it, I move that we reconsider House Bill 145.
Those in favor? Opposed? Very well, we will reconsider. Is there any discussion on this? Are you ready for the question? The question arises on the motion of Senator Oliveri that when this committee does rise and report after having under consideration House Bill 145, it recommend the same do concur in to override the veto. Those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Seeing none, we do have 2/3 majority. The clerk will handle the necessary paperwork. Are there any other motions at this time? Senator Ayden.
Back on the docket list.
There's a motion to also recall Senate Bill 202, which has been overridden in the House. All in favor? Those opposed? I believe the ayes had that. The justification for the veto. Too harsh of a charge, no gradual change between plastic and reusable bags, and we can't expect all businesses to immediately step use. It's an E, guys. Is there any discussion on this motion? Senator Oliveri.
Keep in mind that when we were just talking about the 25-cent tax on plastic bags, we did mention this, and we all agreed that Senator Temple was vetoing this bill, but he would approve the tax. So, yeah, Governor Temple, I'm sorry. He vetoed this bill, but he would approve the tax, so let's just let this bill die.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll put the question. The question now arises on the motion of Senator Ayden that when this committee does rise and report after having under consideration Senate Bill 202, recommend the same, do concur in to override the veto, signify by saying aye. Those opposed? Given we had perhaps 2 or 3 ayes, we do not have anywhere close to the 2/3 needed, therefore the motion fails. And the clerk can, whatever is done with this. Any further points at this time on bills that have been transmitted to us, or are we ready to return to the docket? Seeing no motions, members of the committee, you now have before you for consideration House Bill 150. The clerk will read the title and history of the bill.
A bill for an act entitled Breathalyzers and Bars. Committee recommendation, do pass as amended. Proposed amendments administered to those who are drinking, funded by state, but future establishments will provide their own. Those who aid breathalyzer plus receive a DUI will be fined extra. Bar will offer other services routinely.
Very well. Members of the committee, you now have before you in its entirety House Bill 150. What is your pleasure, Senator Jack Shaw?
Mr. President, members of the committee, I move that when this committee does rise and report after having under consideration House Bill 150, that I recommend the same be concurred in. This bill will cut down on drunk driving and buzz driving, making it mandatory that you blow into the breathalyzer to get your, well, what's it called? Toxicology report? What? alcohol content, and you know, it's just kind of like what they're coming up with, like the apps. You know, this is just going to hinder and prevent you from getting behind the wheel of a vehicle while you are intoxicated. Consequently, it's going to save countless number of lives, and I urge you to vote yes.
Thank you, Senator. Is there any questions of our sponsor? Senator Ryan.
How are you going to ensure that the customers will actually breathe into it? Because as a bartender, they don't always oblige.
Yes, in the amendment, if I can find it for you here, there's a special officer. Yeah, there'll be an officer that's located there that, you know, enforces you to blow.
Are there any further questions of the sponsor? Seeing none, is there any discussion on this bill? Seeing none, would the sponsor care to close?
I yield my time.
Very well. The question now arises on the motion of Senator Jackshaw that when this committee does rise report after having under consideration House Bill 150, it recommend the same do concur in. Those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Very well, the motion passes. Senator Jackshaw.
I've just been informed the House of Representatives have impeached Governor Temple, and we have to have a hearing trial in the next 8 minutes.
What are the charges? Public indecency with his girlfriend at the dance. Interesting. And you wish to have some type of a trial. Would we please stand at ease for a moment while I consult with Senators Jackshaw and Oliveri? And would the Sergeant at Arms remove the governor from the floor? All right, so you want to have some kind of a trial?
Huh?
You want to have some kind of a trial?
Yeah.
I mean, they actually, for once, kind of went through the right process.
Hey, you know what? I'm not coming back, so neither of you will come back, so let's do it. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Come on, shake my hand.
No, I'll agree to it. I'm concerned about a comment you made, but keep going.
I mean, if we
Just
pass
sitting in on this
any more bills at this point, the House isn't going to be able
If
to
we
deal
pass
with them. So
if we
what's
pass
the
any
point?
more bills at this point, it's going to be because nobody's discussing anything, and we're all just.
Let's just let people have some fun.
What I really see is that everyone just wants to find a way to just.
Here's what I want you to do, because originally this was supposed to happen somewhere else. We can try it here. So I want you to try him on that. I also want you to try him on the election last year being illegal.
We can do that.
Because
it was
in the same school. So let's invalidate him and his lieutenant governor.
Okay.
On that charge, as well as the charge of indecency.
Okay, and then do we have the whole legal vote?
I think so.
Okay.
House a rap battle / dance off.
All right.
Tell them that we'll have.
All right, guys. We don't have very many minutes left, so if you are in here from the House concerning the impeaching, please stand in the back quietly, or just be quiet and everybody sit down, and it should run smoothly.
Thank you very much. Now, after consulting with the majority leader and the Titan, hold on a minute.
The House of Representatives cordially invites the Senate to a fight to the death, and you and Ms. Johnston have to have a dance-off.
Can we wait until? Yes, Senator Oliveri?
We are in the middle of a hearing trial on an impeachment. This request from the House is out of order.
I will wait.
Hurry, Gunther.
All right, very well. Senator Jackshaw, I guess we should start with a formal reading of the charges for the Senate to hear.
The charges are public indecency at the dance with his girlfriend, and also his running mate this year, the lieutenant governor, is from the same delegation, and according, like last year's election, they're from the same school, and according to the rules, you can't do that, you can't be from the same school. So the whole election last year was illegal, and his reign is illegal.
Very well, Senator Jack Shaw. So we have before us charges to impeach the governor and remove him from office on the basis of 1, indecency in public, and 2, on the basis that his election was not legal in the first place. Tied with that is, of course, the implication that the election of his lieutenant governor was equally illegal. So, very well. Do we have anyone who wishes? Yes, Senator Oliveri.
At this time, there is a cabinet member on the Senate floor who has a statement from the governor if the Senate wants to hear it, but we can say no.
No, we don't.
I don't think probably anyone wants to hear it. So,
keep in mind in the Senate we can't shut down a filibuster.
Don't recognize him.
are we going to have a filibuster? Because if this is going to take a while, I could go do that dance-off thing.
He's reading the Bible. Don't recognize him.
Keegan, if you intend to filibuster, like, are you going to give me enough time to go handle business elsewhere, or what? The whole Senate has to?
Turn my mic on and get going.
Okay, very well. Well, I guess, yeah. Okay, go ahead, Keegan.
Hello. I actually here have a reading from the words of our governor, Shannon Temple. This is actually the words of Shannon Temple, thank you. Now concerning the matters about which you wrote, it is good for a man not to have sexual relations with a woman. But because of the temptation to sexual immorality, each man should have his own wife and his own woman, her own husband. Thank you.
Would some senator please address this? Senator Oliveri?
First off, they are not in fact married, so that makes their public indecency even worse by his own words. And that also doesn't address the fact that he's illegally governor anyway. I move that we vote on this matter as a Senate body.
All right, very well. Do we have a, we're ready to vote then, I guess, if there's no objections. So all those in favor of carrying through with the trial and impeachment charges and ejecting the governor? Those opposed? All right, the governor is hereby ejected from office, as is Lieutenant Governor Schnabel. And at this time, if the pro tem would come to the chair position so that the president of the Senate may assume the offices of the governor.
Before we go to a dance battle, can we all congratulate new Governor Clark? All right, guys, we have approximately 0 minutes left. Let's go head to the House so we can have a dance battle and fight, I guess. Don't actually be violent. Don't kill people. I do, however, need a motion from the House Majority or the Senate Majority Leader.
Madam President, I move that we adjourn till next year.
Is there any objection? You're not on the Senate, so moved. What?
Did you guys just adjourn?
We just adjourned.
Okay, how funny was that? I was like, I turned it, and I was like, perfect. Now hit start moving matter to which you wrote. Disable all